there. And then there's this, President Trump already securing trade concessions from the EU. The big question now is, could China be next? The National Center for Public Policy Research fellow Horace Cooper and the evening edit host Liz McDonald. Horace, pretty good news this morning that the U.S.-China back at the trade tables. I want to note for the audience, it is interesting this comes on a PMI report from China at a 5-month low and another, the sub-index, at a 23-month low. There's no doubt they're feeling the economic pain. Maybe that pushed them back to the table.
Well, it's pretty clear the president is serious about renegotiating the nature of this relationship, and there's absolutely no reason, if the Chinese are serious about supporting and promoting business growth in their country, that they should understand that we need to be serious about promoting business growth in our country. The cheating, the stealing, the coercion has got to come to an end. We're seeing the signs that that's the case. And now, with our booming economy, it's the perfect time for this negotiation to take place.
Yeah, Elizabeth, it's interesting because this morning we saw a strong income and spending number. By the way, spending revised from the prior month. We saw compensation at a 10-year high, employee compensation. We've got to win in ourselves. So if you're going to fight this kind of a battle, now's the time to fight it.
Yeah, it's an important point you and your guests are making. The president is cashing in on with some of that growth to do what he's trying to do in resetting the table of trade. You know, the interesting anecdote you just described about the PMI number in China, Charles, is so important because I'm just tracking the news coming out of China. What exactly is going on inside China? We know China's economy is built on exports. Manufacturers, we're hearing, are leaving China. They don't want to deal with the trade war. They're going to safe havens like Vietnam and Malaysia to avoid this China trade fight with the U.S. You know, Alibaba needs our U.S. companies to sell on Alibaba's site. They need, like, companies like Nike. They need U.S. goods. So companies over there in China are getting rattled. China has done a $200 billion fiscal stimulus already. The yuan is weakening. And watch this. This flew under the radar screen about the EU, Charles. The EU handshake deal involved the EU also stepping up to fight unfair stealing of IP theft and technology transfers. The EU does that, Japan does it, and China does it. The fact that the EU is now stepping up to the plate on that is really significant for what is going on with China.
Horace, what do you make of the idea, though, that China, you know, they can probably withstand this, not necessarily economically, but because of the way their political structure is? Xi more or less has made himself the modern-day emperor. He doesn't have to worry about a negative press. He doesn't have to worry about a negative Congress. He doesn't have to worry about even people in his own political party who are against this. So he does have that to his advantage. Will that make much? Could that make the difference?
So the Chinese government requires growth in order for it to perpetuate the dictatorship that runs that jurisdiction. In other free countries, you have breakers that go off to let you know when there are problems. That's what a Congress does. That's what a free media does. They help send signals when there are problems. The circumstance in China is, since you don't have those problems, those solutions as tools to help guide you and steer you, you absolutely need to maintain the kind of growth that we actually aren't truly seeing from China. They have a reputation that this kind of growth is sustainable and is ongoing, but it's starting to look like it's been a lot of hype. It's been a lot of misleading representations, and those things create problems for the Chinese leadership.
Well, you know, also, Emac, I mean, they grew at 10% for almost 30 years, and their growth has slowed. They have amazing ambitions. You know, they want to recreate the Silk Road around the world. They want to dominate the world. So what do you think, though, if we had to headline tomorrow that, hey, U.S.-China comes to an agreement, let's just throw a number out there. China promises or pledges to remove $150 billion worth of trade barriers, trade deficit, also stop the joint ventures, tariffs and also allow for greater access to the markets. I mean, could we have a 500,000-point session?
Oh, wow. We could have a 1,000,000 point. No,
thank you.
No, you're right. It'd be a whopper. I mean, I think it'd be a big pop in the markets if that was settled. You're right. It'd be another victory for the president. You know, what we're seeing in China, too, is that China censors dissent. We're seeing reports about think tanks saying, hey, wait a second, China, what is your policy here? And it has to be pointed out that China really does not have a fan base in Washington, D.C. Charles, you remember how the Senate, including Republicans, were saying, what are you doing with ZTE? We don't like that part of your policy here, Mr. President. But China does not have a lot of support in Washington, D.C. It's bipartisan support, it seems, largely on the face of it, for what the president is doing with resetting the table with tariffs. I think the markets would go up if he got that deal with China.
I do, too, even without the details, even if it wasn't the numbers I just threw out there, because we know Wall Street, once it's over with, they enjoy the status quo more than, let's say, the heartland does. Horace, on that note, I saw recently where China now is spending a lot of money on folks down there to do their bidding in Washington, D.C. One of the reasons there was a compromise on ZTE, even seeing John Boehner's name thrown around. You know, so we do have to be careful. There are some very powerful entities out there, including trillions of dollars in wealth, that do okay with the way things are right now.
So the status quo isn't going to stay. There are instances where the president of China can talk to the president of the United States directly about specific issues. And in order to maintain a healthy relationship, you might see some responsiveness. But that's not going to be able to be a tool for every problem. Broadly speaking, even top dollar lobbyists aren't going to be able to change the fact there isn't overwhelming support. There isn't even moderately high support in Congress or in the American media or among the public for the continuation of the policies that exist. It's actually very popular with the American people that the president would like to reset the table with regard to our relationship.
Yeah, we all kind of inherently understand what we've missed out on over the last 2 or 3 decades. Thank you both very much. Really appreciate it.